I found the journal in my grandmother's attic 3 weeks after her funeral. It was wrapped in oilcloth, tucked inside a rusted tobacco tin, hidden beneath floorboards that had warped with age and humidity. The leather cover had turned black with mold, and the pages crackled when I opened them. The handwriting was crude, urgent, the letters pressed so hard into the paper that some entries had torn straight through. The first page had a name, Elijah Marsh, 1790 Assam. My grandmother's maiden name was Marsh. I'd never heard of an Elijah in our family tree, but then again, the branches that reached back before the Civil War were mostly blank spaces and guesswork. I almost put it back, almost resealed it, and left it for someone else to find in another 100 years. But then I read the first entry, dated April 3rd, 1790, and I couldn't stop. This is that journal. I've transcribed it exactly as written, including the spelling errors, the strange grammar, the parts that don't make sense. I haven't changed anything. I've added my own thoughts in brackets where I think context might help, or where I need to work through what I'm reading, because honestly, I'm still trying to understand it myself. What follows is either the ravings of a madman, an elaborate hoax perpetrated by one of my ancestors, or something far worse. I'm leaning toward the third option, and that should terrify me more than it does. But I grew up in Appalachia. I grew up hearing stories. And some part of me, the part that still remembers being a child and feeling watched in the woods behind my grandmother's house, knows this is real. April 3rd, 1790. We have been walking for 6 weeks, 23 families when we started at Fort Chiswell, 19 now. The Hendersons turned back after Mary Henderson lost her baby to the fever. The Pratts and the Wisharts and the Colemans decided the land office in Kentucky was good enough. Didn't need to push further into the wilderness. Can't say I blame them. Rebecca wanted to stop too. She hasn't said it outright, but I can see it in how she holds little Thomas, how she counts our supplies twice each night. But the land patent is for 600 acres in the Cumberland Valley, already paid for, already legally mine on paper, that cost more than I've ever held in my hand at once time. My father went into debt for that patent, died before he could use it. I'll be damned if I let it go to waste. We should reach the valley in another 2 weeks if the weather holds. The guide, Mr. Kenton, says there's a creek runs through the property, good timber, soil black as coal. Says the Cherokee haven't used this particular valley in generations, which is why the land office was willing to sell it. That should have been my first warning right there. Indians don't abandon good land without reason. April 8th, 1790. Something happened today that I need to write down, even though I'm not entirely sure what I saw. We made camp in a hollow between 2 ridges. There was a spring there, good water, and we were all exhausted from climbing. The children were playing near the wagons while we men worked on the fires, and the women prepared what little food we had left. Salt pork and cornmeal, the same thing we've eaten for 40 days straight. Thomas, who is 4 years old and afraid of nothing, went chasing after a rabbit. He disappeared into the tree line before Rebecca could stop him. I ran after him, calling his name, my heart in my throat because a child can die in 100 ways out here, and most of them are fast. I found him standing in a small clearing, completely still. He was staring up at the trees. The rabbit was gone. I called to him, but he didn't respond, didn't even blink. I had to physically pick him up and shake him before he seemed to wake up. "The trees were talking, Papa," he said. I told him trees don't talk. He insisted they did. Said they were whispering his name. Rebecca thinks he's just tired and scared. I think she's right. I hope she's right. But I'll admit, when I was standing in that clearing, there was something off about it. The trees there were different from the ones around our camp. Taller, older, their bark almost black, and they grew in a perfect circle, which I've never seen before in nature. Everything in nature is random, chaotic. But these trees stood like they'd been planted deliberately, like fence posts around something that needed keeping in. Or keeping out. We're moving on tomorrow. I'll be glad to leave this place behind. April 12th, 1790. 4 more days and we should reach the valley. The land has changed. The mountains here are older, worn down, covered in forest so thick that at midday it feels like dusk. The trees block out the sun. Sometimes we walk for hours in a green twilight that plays tricks on your eyes. Mr. S. Kenton seems nervous, though he tries to hide it. He keeps checking his compass, frowning at it like it's telling him things he doesn't want to believe. When I asked him if we were lost, he snapped at me that he's never been lost a day in his life, which is exactly what a lost man would say. The other families are getting restless too. John Blackwood's wife started crying last night for no reason she could explain. Said she just felt sad, a sadness that came from outside herself and soaked into her bones. Her husband told her to pray harder. I don't think prayer is what she needs. Rebecca asked me tonight if we could turn back, actually asked me outright. I told her we've come too far, spent too much, risked too much. The valley is close now, our new life is close, we just have to keep moving forward. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "Sometimes moving forward is how you walk into your own grave, Elijah." I didn't have an answer for that. Reading this, I can feel the dread building. Elijah Marsh was my however many greats grandfather, and he had no idea what he was walking into. But the worst part is, I think he sensed it. They all did. The human instinct for danger is strong, evolved over thousands of years of being prey. But we've also learned to ignore it, to rationalize it away, to convince ourselves that our goals are more important than our fears. That's how people end up dead. That's how entire groups of people end up dead. April 15th, 1790. We found the valley today. God help us, we found it. It's exactly as described in the land patent. A long, narrow valley running north to south, surrounded by mountains on all sides. The creek runs through it, clear and cold. The soil is indeed black, the timber is tall and straight. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And it's silent. I didn't notice it at first because we were all so excited, so relieved to finally reach our destination. The women were crying with joy. The men were shaking hands and clapping each other on the backs. We'd made it. After 6 weeks of walking, of doubt, of fear, we'd actually made it. But as the afternoon wore on and we started to set up our temporary camp, I began to realize something was wrong. There were no birds, no squirrels chattering in the trees, no insects buzzing. The only sound was the creek and our own voices, and even our voices seemed muffled, absorbed by the trees that surrounded the valley like a wall. Mr. Kenton left before supper. Didn't even ask for the rest of his payment. Just saddled his horse, took what supplies he'd carried, and rode back the way we'd come. Said he'd fulfilled his contract by getting us here, and he wasn't staying another hour. When pressed, all he would say was, "There's old places in these mountains. Places that were old when the Indians were young. This is one of them. You'd be wise to leave with me." No one left with him. We'd come too far. We'd paid too much. Rebecca hasn't spoken to me since he rode away. She's sitting by the fire now, holding Thomas, staring at the trees. I asked her what she's looking at. She said, "They're so still. Even in the wind, they don't move quite right." I told her she's imagining things. She didn't argue, just kept staring. April 16th, 1790. John Blackwood is missing. He went out at first light to scout the north end of the valley to find the best place to build his cabin. He never came back. We organized a search party at noon. 8 men, all armed, calling his name, following the creek north for over a mile. We found his musket leaning against a tree. Just standing there, perfectly balanced, like someone had carefully placed it. The ground around it was undisturbed. No signs of struggle, no blood, no tracks except John's own footprints leading up to the tree, and then nothing. Like he'd simply vanished mid-step. His wife is hysterical. She insists we keep searching, but where? How? A man doesn't just disappear. There has to be some explanation. Animal attack maybe, though there was no blood. Fell into the creek and drowned, though we searched the water for hours. Got disoriented and wandered into the forest, though John Blackwood was an experienced woodsman who'd hunted these mountains for years before we set out. We'll search again tomorrow at first light. We have to, but I can see the fear in everyone's eyes. This isn't right. This valley isn't right. I'm starting to think Mr. Kenton was smarter than all of us combined. April 17th, 1790. No sign of John Blackwood. We searched all day, nothing. But something else happened. something I need to write down while it's fresh in my mind because I don't trust my own memory anymore. We were deep in the forest on the western slope, calling John's name when I got separated from the group. It wasn't intentional. I was following what I thought was the sound of someone calling back to us. And by the time I realized I was alone, I couldn't hear the others anymore. I wasn't panicked at first. I could see the valley below me. I knew which way to go, but then I noticed the trees. They were in rows. Not natural rows, but deliberate ones, like an orchard or a plantation. And they were all the same species, the same age, the same height. All of them had that dark, almost black bark I'd noticed before. And carved into each trunk, about chest high, was a symbol. I'm going to try to draw it here. The journal page shows a crude drawing of a circle with 3 lines radiating from the center, each line ending in a smaller circle. It looks almost like a simplified drawing of a tree, or maybe an eye with 3 pupils. There were dozens of these trees, maybe hundreds, all carved with the same symbol, all standing in perfect rows that stretched back into the forest farther than I could see. I walked along one of the rows, running my hand over the carvings. The bark was warm. That shouldn't mean anything. Bark holds heat from the sun, but the forest floor was in shadow and had been for hours. The bark shouldn't have been warm, but it was. And then I heard it. A whisper, very faint, like wind through leaves, except there was no wind. The air was completely still. The whisper said my name, Elijah. Not threatening, not loud, just curious, like someone meeting me for the first time. I ran. I don't remember the path I took, but I ran until I found the others. I didn't tell them about the rows of trees or the carvings or the whisper. I don't know why. Some instinct told me to keep it to myself. Rebecca knows something happened, though. She keeps looking at me with this expression I can't read. It's not quite fear, not quite pity. It's something worse. It's resignation. I need to pause here and talk about something. I grew up hearing stories about the old Appalachian forests, the ones that existed before logging and development. My grandmother told me that her grandmother told her that there were places in those forests where the trees grew in ways they shouldn't, patterns that couldn't be natural. And if you found yourself in one of those places, you needed to leave immediately, without looking back, without trying to understand what you were seeing. I always thought they were just stories, superstition, mountain folklore. I don't think that anymore. Because I've done research since finding this journal. I've looked at old land surveys from the Cumberland region. And that valley, the one described in Elijah's land patent, it doesn't exist on any modern map. The coordinates lead to a section of national forest that's been closed to the public since the 1960s. No official reason given. Just closed. I tried to file a Freedom of Information request to find out why. I got a letter back saying that the records I requested were not available for public disclosure due to ongoing environmental assessment. That was it. No details, no timeline for when they might become available. I think someone knows about that valley. I think someone has known for a long time. April 18th, 1790. 2 more people are missing, Sarah Pruitt and her daughter Emma. They were gathering firewood at the edge of camp. 1 minute they were there, the next they were gone. No one saw them leave. No one heard anything. We're not searching anymore. We're getting ready to leave. But here's the problem. We can't find the path we used to enter the valley. That sounds insane, I know. We came in from the south, followed the creek down from the ridge. It's a simple matter of reversing our route. Except when we actually start walking south, following the creek upward, we always end up back at our camp. Always. No matter which direction we actually walk in, we end up back at the camp. Thomas Whitaker swears we're being turned around somehow. He says the valley is enchanted, cursed, protected by some force we can't see or understand. His wife told him to stop talking nonsense, but I could see that she believed him. We all believe him. The trees. It's the trees. They look the same everywhere, impossible to use as landmarks, and they're so dense that you can only see a few yards in any direction. It's like being in a maze where every path leads back to the center. Rebecca packed our belongings today without me asking her to. She didn't speak while she worked. When she finished, she sat down next to me and said, "We're going to die here, aren't we?" I told her no. I told her we'd find a way out. I told her everything was going to be fine. She smiled at me, a sad, knowing smile. Then she said, "You were always a terrible liar, Elijah." April 19th, 1790. We're down to 15 families. The Whitakers tried to leave on their own during the night. We found their wagon this morning, abandoned about 100 yards from camp. The supplies were still inside. The horses were gone. There was no sign of the family. People are starting to break. Jacob Turner attacked William Cross today, accused him of bringing us here on purpose, claimed this was all some kind of scheme. It took 4 men to pull them apart. Later, I found Jacob sitting alone by the creek crying. He's a big man, fought in the war, never showed fear of anything. But he was crying like a child. "They're watching us," he said when he saw me. "The trees, they're watching us." I told him trees can't watch anything. He laughed, bitter, broken laughter. "Go look for yourself," he said. "Go look at the trees and tell me they're not watching." I did. God help me, I did. He's right. I don't know how to explain it. The trees haven't changed position. They haven't grown eyes or faces or any of the obvious things you'd associate with watching. But when you stand still in the forest, when you really pay attention, you can feel it. Attention, consciousness, intent. The trees are aware of us, and they're doing something, keeping us here, preventing us from leaving. But why? What do they want? April 20th, 1790. Thomas spoke to them today. My son, my 4-year-old son. I woke up just before dawn to find his bedroll empty. I panicked, thought we'd lost him like we'd lost the others. But then I saw him. He was standing at the edge of the tree line, his back to me, talking to someone I couldn't see. I ran to him, grabbed him, pulled him away. He didn't resist, didn't even seem to notice I was there at first. His eyes were unfocused, distant. When he finally looked at me, really looked at me, he said, "The trees want to tell me something, Papa. They have a message." I shook him. I'm not proud of it, but I shook my son and yelled at him to stop, to never go near the trees again, to stay by the fire where I could see him. He started crying. Rebecca came running. She took him from me, held him while he sobbed. She didn't yell at me for being rough with him. She just looked at me with those resigned eyes again. Later, when Thomas had calmed down, I asked him what the trees wanted to tell him. He said, "They want us to stay. They want us to become part of the forest. They say we'll be safe here. They say we'll never have to be afraid again." "And what did you tell them?" I asked. "I told them I wanted my mama and papa. I told them I wanted to go home." "What did they say?" Thomas looked at me with eyes too old for his face. "They said this is home now. They said there's no leaving, not ever." I need to say something here about the nature of evil, or at least the nature of malevolent forces. We tend to think of them as obviously monstrous, something that announces itself through violence and terror. But the most insidious evil is the kind that offers comfort, the kind that promises safety in exchange for surrender, the kind that tells you the struggle is over, the journey is done, all you have to do is stop fighting and accept where you are. That's what the trees were doing. They weren't threatening these people. They were seducing them, offering them peace and permanence in exchange for their freedom. And for people who'd spent their entire lives struggling to survive, who'd walked 6 weeks through wilderness, who'd lost friends and family along the way, that offer must have been incredibly tempting. April 22nd, 1790. I haven't written in 2 days because I've been trying to find a way out, any way out. I've climbed the ridges surrounding the valley. I've followed the creek in both directions for miles. I've marked trees to track my progress. Nothing works. The valley is sealed, not by walls or barriers or anything physical, but by something else. Something that warps space itself, that makes every path lead back to the center, that keeps us contained as surely as if we were in a prison. The others are giving up. I can see it happening. They're building permanent structures now, cabins, pens for animals we don't have, gardens for crops we can't plant because it's too late in the season. They're acting like this is normal, like we plan to stay here forever. Margaret Cross tried to stop her husband from cutting down a tree for their cabin. She was screaming, hysterical, saying it was wrong, that the trees were sacred, that we'd anger them. William hit her. First time I'd ever seen him raise a hand to her. She fell silent after that. Just stood there, touching her face, staring at the tree like it might explain what was happening to her life. That night, William disappeared. We found him the next morning. I'm going to describe what we found because I need to get it out of my head and onto paper where maybe it will stop haunting me. William Cross had been incorporated into a tree, not buried beneath it, not hung from it, not even tied to it. He'd been absorbed into it. His body was fused with the trunk, his arms spread wide and transformed into branches, his legs rooted into the ground. His face was still recognizable, frozen in the bark, mouth open in a silent scream. But he was alive. His eyes moved. They followed us as we approached, and I swear to God, I saw recognition in them. I saw terror. I saw pleading. We tried to free him. We tried axes and saws and fire. Nothing worked. The tree was as hard as iron, and every time we struck it, William's eyes would widen in pain. We had to leave him there. We had no choice. Margaret sat with him all day, talking to him, apologizing, begging for forgiveness. By evening, she'd stopped making sense, just gibberish and weeping. This morning, Margaret was gone. We haven't found her yet. I don't think we will. April 24th, 1790. 10 families left. The others have been, I don't even know what to call it, taken, transformed, absorbed. We're all going to end up like William Cross. I know this now. There's no escape. The valley doesn't want us to leave. It wants us to stay. It wants us to feed it. Because that's what's happening, I understand now. The trees are feeding on us, not on our bodies exactly, on something else. Our fear, maybe, our desperation, our humanity. Each person who disappears makes the forest stronger. I can see it. The trees are taller than they were when we arrived. Their bark is darker. The silence is deeper. Rebecca won't talk to me anymore. She just sits by the fire with Thomas, rocking him, singing lullabies. Thomas doesn't play anymore, doesn't laugh. He just stares at the trees with those old, knowing eyes. I'm losing them. Even if we somehow escape this valley, I'm losing them to whatever force lives here. The trees have already claimed part of their minds. Last night I had a dream. Or maybe I was awake and it was a vision. I saw the valley as it was 1,000 years ago. The trees were younger, smaller, and there were people here, not settlers like us, original inhabitants. They were dancing around the trees, singing, making offerings. And then something changed. The trees grew, the people became fewer, and then the people were gone. But the trees remained, taller and darker than ever, waiting for us. April 26th, 1790. Thomas is gone. I woke up this morning to find him missing. Rebecca was still asleep, which meant he'd slipped away on his own, deliberately quiet so as not to wake us. I found him in the forest, standing in a circle of those black-barked trees, the ones with the carved symbols. He was holding hands with something. I can't describe what it was. It looked like a child, roughly Thomas's size and shape, but it was made of wood and leaves and shadow. Its face was a blank knot of wood. It had no eyes, but I could feel it looking at me. Thomas turned when he heard me approach. He smiled, a real smile, the first I'd seen in days. "Papa," he said, "I found a friend. The trees made me a friend so I wouldn't be lonely." The wooden child's head turned toward me. I felt its attention, cold and curious. I grabbed Thomas and ran. The wooden child didn't follow, but I could hear it behind us. Not footsteps exactly, more like creaking branches and rustling leaves getting closer. We made it back to camp. I'm holding Thomas now while I write this. Rebecca is praying, out loud, desperately, going through every prayer she knows and some I don't recognize. Thomas keeps asking when he can go back to play with his friend. April 27th, 1790. There are only 4 families left. The Harrises, the Pattersons, the Turners, and us. The others didn't disappear. They walked into the forest willingly. I watched it happen. Just after dawn, the remaining families gathered their belongings and started walking toward the trees. No discussion, no explanation. They just went. I tried to stop them, grabbed Jacob Turner's arm and demanded to know what he was doing. He looked at me with empty eyes and said, "It's time. The trees are calling us home." "This isn't home," I shouted. "This is a trap. This is death." He smiled, peaceful, serene. Death would be a mercy compared to what we left behind. The trees offer something better. They offer forever. And then they were gone, all of them, walked into the forest and vanished among the shadows. It's just us now, me, Rebecca, Thomas, and the Patterson family on the other side of camp. We don't talk to them. We don't look at them. We're all afraid that if we make eye contact, if we acknowledge what's happening, we'll lose the will to resist. Because the truth is, I understand the appeal. I understand why they walked into the forest. I can feel the pull myself. The promise of peace, the promise of belonging, the promise that the struggle is over. It would be so easy to give in. April 28, 1790. The Pattersons are building an altar. I didn't notice until this afternoon. They've cleared a space near the edge of camp and they're stacking stones in some kind of pattern. A foundation, maybe, for something larger. When I asked them what they were doing, Mr. Patterson said, "Making a place of worship. The trees deserve our devotion. They've given us shelter and safety. The least we can do is honor them." His wife was weaving branches together, creating some kind of icon or totem. She was humming while she worked, a strange melody I'd never heard before. It set my teeth on edge. I told them to stop. I told them this was madness. Mr. Patterson just smiled that same peaceful smile Jacob Turner had and said, "You'll understand soon enough, Elijah. We all understand eventually." Rebecca overheard the conversation. She took Thomas and our remaining supplies and moved us to the far side of camp. We're sleeping under the wagon now, as far from the Pattersons as we can get. Tonight I can hear them singing, that same strange melody, and I swear I can hear the trees singing back. A low, resonant hum that comes from everywhere and nowhere, vibrating through the ground and up through my bones. I'm afraid to sleep, afraid of what might happen if I let my guard down even for a moment. April 29, 1790. The Pattersons are gone, their altar is complete, and something is wrong with Rebecca. I noticed it this morning. She was staring at the trees with an expression I'd never seen before. Not fear, not resignation, something else, longing. "They're beautiful," she said. "Have you really looked at them, Elijah? They're the most beautiful things I've ever seen." I grabbed her face, forced her to look at me instead of the trees. "Don't," I said. "Don't listen to them. Don't let them in." She pulled away from me. "They're already in. They've been in since we arrived. We just didn't want to admit it." Thomas was sitting nearby, playing with a stick. Except it wasn't a stick. It was a small wooden figure carved in the shape of a person. He was making it walk across the ground, talking to it in whispers. "Where did you get that?" I demanded. "My friend made it for me," Thomas said. "He said if I keep it with me, I'll never be alone. Even when you and Mama are gone, I'll have him." I tried to take it from him. He screamed, actually screamed, high and piercing, like I was torturing him. Rebecca grabbed my arm, told me to leave him alone. "It's just a toy," she said. "Let him have this one comfort." But it's not just a toy. I can see it moving when I'm not looking directly at it. Small movements, a shifting of position, a turning of the head. We're not going to make it out of here. I know this now. The valley has us. The trees have us. It's just a matter of time before we join the others, but I'm going to fight it as long as I can. For Rebecca, for Thomas, for the memory of who we were before we entered this cursed place. May 1st, 1790. I'm alone. Rebecca left during the night. I woke to find her gone, Thomas gone, all our supplies gone. She took everything and disappeared into the forest. I searched for hours, calling their names, following tracks that led nowhere. I found the wooden figure Thomas had been carrying. It was sitting on a tree root, positioned like it was watching me. I smashed it, stomped on it until it was splinters. But when I looked back, there was another one, and another. A dozen wooden figures, all identical, all arranged in a circle around me. I ran, back to camp, back to the wagon, back to this journal. Because this journal is the only proof I have that any of this happened, that we were real people with real lives before the valley took us. I can hear singing in the forest. Rebecca's voice, and Thomas laughing. They sound happy. Part of me wants to follow them, wants to join them in whatever peace they've found. But I can't. Some stubborn part of my soul refuses to surrender. So I'm going to write down everything I know, everything I've learned, in case someone finds this, in case someone else is fool enough to come to this valley. The trees are not trees, or they were once, but they're something else now. They're a collective consciousness, an ancient intelligence that's learned to mimic the forest, to hide in plain sight, to feed on human fear and desperation. They can't force you to join them. You have to go willingly. That's why they work on your mind first. Break you down, show you visions, make promises, create doubt, until eventually surrender seems like the logical choice, the peaceful choice. The symbols carved into the trees are a warning. I understand that now. They were left by people who came before us, people who tried to resist. Each symbol represents a life consumed, a soul absorbed. There are hundreds of them, maybe thousands. This valley is a trap, a perfect trap. It offers everything you want: land, safety, peace. But the price is everything you are. If you're reading this, turn back. Don't come here. Don't trust the land patents or the promises or the guides who say it's safe. It's not safe. It's a feeding ground for something older and hungrier than you can imagine. And if you're already here, if you've already entered the valley, then I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, because you're not leaving. None of us are leaving. The trees are watching us. They've always been watching, and now, finally, I understand what they want. They want to grow. May 3rd, 1790. I found the others today, all of them. They're in the center of the valley, in a grove I hadn't discovered before. The trees there are massive, ancient, their trunks wider than any tree I've ever seen. And inside the trunks, visible through the bark like insects trapped in amber, are people. Rebecca is there, Thomas is there, every single person who entered this valley is there, suspended in wood, eyes open, mouths frozen in expressions of terror or ecstasy, or both. But they're not dead. I can see them breathing, see their eyes tracking movement. They're alive and aware, trapped inside living prisons, feeding the trees with their consciousness, their memories, their souls. I saw John Blackwood, William Cross, the Whitakers, the Pattersons, all of them. Dozens of people from our group and from groups that came before us, stretching back decades, maybe centuries, and the trees are using them. I can feel it. The collective consciousness I sensed before is made up of human minds, absorbed and networked and transformed into something that isn't quite human anymore. The trees are thinking with our thoughts, growing with our life force, expanding their awareness with every soul they consume. Rebecca saw me. I know she did. Her eyes found mine across the grove, and she smiled. A peaceful, contented smile. She's happy there. They all are in some twisted way. The trees have convinced them this is paradise, eternal life, eternal communion. No more struggle, no more pain, no more difficult choices. I ran from the grove, ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. I'm back at the wagon now, writing this final entry. Tomorrow I'm going to try one more time to escape. I'm going to walk in a straight line, no matter what I see or hear or feel, and I'm going to keep walking until I either find the boundary of the valley or I die trying. If I don't make it, if this journal is found inside the valley, then it means I failed. It means I'm in one of those trees now, feeding the forest, my consciousness scattered among the collective mind. But if this journal is found outside the valley, if someone is reading this somewhere safe and far away, then do one thing for me. Burn it down. Burn the entire valley to ash. Let nothing grow there again. Free us. Free all of us. The trees are watching us. They've always been watching. And they're hungry. God forgive me for bringing my family here. God forgive us all. Undated entry, different handwriting. My name is Samuel Marsh. I'm Elijah's younger brother. I came looking for him in the summer of 1791, more than a year after he was due to arrive at the Cumberland Valley. I found this journal in his wagon. The wagon was sitting in a clearing, exactly as he'd left it. His tools were there, his personal effects, everything except Elijah. I spent 3 days searching for him. I found the grove he described. I saw the trees with the people inside them. I saw Rebecca. I saw little Thomas, but I didn't see Elijah. He's not in any of the trees, which means he either escaped or something worse happened to him. I'm leaving this valley now, I'm taking the journal with me, and I'm going to make sure no one else ever comes here. I've marked all my maps to show this area as impassable. I'm going to spread rumors that the land is cursed, that the soil is poisoned, that death waits here. Whatever it takes to keep people away. Because Elijah was right about one thing. The trees are watching, and they're always hungry. That was the last entry in the journal proper, but there's one more page, written in a third hand, dated 1823. August 15th, 1823. I am Marcus Downing, land surveyor for the state. I have been hired to survey this valley in preparation for its sale to timber interests. I found this journal in a hollow tree near what appears to be an abandoned camp. After reading it, I cannot in good conscience allow this land to be developed. I have submitted my report claiming that the valley is unstable, prone to flooding, and unsuitable for logging operations. This is a lie. The valley is perfect for timber, but some things should remain untouched. I saw things here that I cannot explain. Carved symbols that hurt to look at. Trees growing in impossible patterns. And yes, I heard the whispers. My name. Called softly, invitingly. I'm leaving tomorrow at first light. I'm sealing this journal in waterproof container and hiding it where it might be found by someone who needs to know the truth. If you're reading this, consider it a warning. There are places in these mountains where the old rules don't apply, where the boundary between the living world and something else grows thin. This valley is one of those places, and it should be left alone. And that's where the historical entries end. What follows is my own addition to the record, written February 2026. I've done research since finding this journal, extensive research, and I've learned some things that make me believe this isn't just a collection of fairy tales or the ravings of people driven mad by isolation. First, there are persistent reports throughout Appalachian history of lost valleys where settlers disappeared. The stories are usually dismissed as folklore, explanations for the simple fact that life on the frontier was dangerous and people died in ways that left no trace. But the details are remarkably consistent. Trees growing in patterns, silence where there should be animal sounds, a feeling of being watched, and always, the difficulty in leaving once you'd arrived. Second, I found records of the land patent mentioned in Elijah's journal. It was issued in 1789 to one Josiah Marsh, Elijah's father, for 600 acres in the Cumberland region. The patent was never exercised. No settlement was ever established on that land, and the coordinates listed in the patent, they matched the location of that closed section of national forest. Third, I found a mention of Samuel Marsh in later records. He did return from his search for his brother. He did spread rumors about the valley, and he spent the rest of his life trying to convince the government to prohibit settlement in that area. He died in 1834, probably thinking he'd failed. But maybe he didn't fail. Maybe the fact that the valley was eventually closed, that it's been protected for decades, that people are actively prevented from going there, means that someone, somewhere, took the warning seriously. Or maybe it means something worse. Maybe it means that people in power know about the valley, know what's there, and they're keeping it secret for reasons I can't begin to fathom. I've tried to visit the valley myself. I've tried 3 times. The first time, I was turned back by a park ranger who claimed the area was closed due to bear activity. The second time, I tried to hike in from a different direction and got lost so thoroughly that I triggered an emergency beacon and had to be rescued by search and rescue. The third time, I didn't even make it to the trailhead before my car broke down, stranding me 30 miles away. Coincidence? Maybe. But I don't think so. The valley doesn't want me to find it. Or more accurately, the valley doesn't want me to find it yet. Not until I'm ready to stay. I think about that a lot. The idea that the valley is patient. That it can wait decades, centuries, for the right people to wander in. People who are desperate enough, tired enough, broken enough to accept what it offers. I think about Rebecca and Thomas, trapped inside those trees, their consciousnesses absorbed into some vast inhuman network. Are they still themselves in any meaningful way? Do they dream? Do they remember their lives before? Or have they been so thoroughly integrated into the collective that individual identity is meaningless? And I think about Elijah, who isn't in any of the trees, who either escaped or met some fate even worse than absorption. Part of me wants to believe he made it out, that he's the reason this journal exists outside the valley, that he walked and walked and walked until finally, miraculously, the boundary failed and he stumbled into the normal world, traumatized but alive. But I don't think that's what happened. I think he's still there. I think the valley gave him a different role, a different purpose. Because here's the thing that keeps me up at night, the journal entries that claim the trees made a friend for Thomas. A wooden child, animated by something that isn't quite alive, but isn't quite dead either. What if the valley does that? What if it takes people who resist, people who refuse to be absorbed, and transforms them into something else? Guardians, maybe. Lures, things that look almost human, that can walk and talk and interact with newcomers, drawing them deeper into the trap. What if Elijah is still in that valley, but not as a prisoner in a tree? What if he's walking among the trunks, wearing a shape that's close enough to human to fool the unwary, calling out to travelers in a voice that sounds almost like their loved ones? That thought terrifies me more than anything else in this journal. The idea that the valley doesn't just consume you, it uses you, transforms you into bait for the next group of desperate souls looking for a fresh start. I'm going to make one more attempt to reach the valley. I know this is foolish. I know every rational part of my brain is screaming at me to leave this alone, to burn the journal, to forget I ever found it. But I can't. Because somewhere in that valley, preserved in wood or walking as something not quite human, are my ancestors, my family, and they deserve to be remembered. They deserve to have their story told. So I'm writing this final entry. I'm sealing the journal in waterproof containers and leaving copies with multiple people, with instructions to make it public if I don't return. And tomorrow, I'm driving to that closed section of National Forest. I'm hiking in, regardless of warnings or barriers or mysterious car troubles. I'm going to find the valley. I'm going to see the trees, and I'm going to try to understand what they are, what they want, and why they've been feeding on lost souls for centuries. If you're reading this, it means I didn't come back. It means the valley has me now one way or another. Learn from my mistake. Learn from Elijah's mistake. Learn from the mistakes of everyone who thought they could challenge something older and stranger than human understanding. The trees are watching. They're always watching. And they're very, very patient. Epilogue, analysis and reflection. Let me step back from the horror and talk about what this story really represents, because I think there's something important here beyond just spooky trees and disappearing settlers. The valley in this journal is a perfect metaphor for certain types of psychological traps we fall into. The promise of peace, of an end to struggle, of finally finding a place where we belong, these are powerful lures. And they're exactly the kind of thing that predators use, whether we're talking about abusive relationships, cults, or addictions. Think about the progression. The settlers entered the valley willingly, drawn by legitimate hopes and dreams. The land was real, the opportunity seemed genuine. But once they were in, once they'd invested enough time and energy and emotion, leaving became impossible. Not because of physical barriers, but because of psychological ones. They'd come too far to turn back. They'd spent too much to admit failure. And the valley offered them something they desperately wanted: an end to uncertainty, a place to rest, a promise that the hard part was over. That's how traps work. They don't announce themselves. They offer you exactly what you think you need. And by the time you realize the price, you're too invested to escape. The tree's ability to feed on human consciousness is another powerful metaphor. How many of us have lost parts of ourselves to systems, organizations, or relationships that demanded we subsume our individual identity for the sake of the collective? How many of us have felt our thoughts becoming less our own, shaped and molded by external forces until we can't remember what we originally believed? The scariest part of the journal isn't the disappearances or the bodies in the trees. It's the progression from resistance to acceptance. The way people who started out terrified ended up walking willingly into the forest, convinced they'd found something better than the world they left behind. That's real horror. Not monsters or violence, but the slow erosion of will. The gradual acceptance of the unacceptable. The moment when giving up starts to feel like wisdom instead of defeat. And the trees themselves, they represent nature as something other than the peaceful, nurturing force we like to imagine. Real wilderness is indifferent to human life. It doesn't care about your dreams or your family or your desperate need for a fresh start. It simply exists, following rules that predate human civilization and will continue long after we're gone. The Appalachian Mountains are old, some of the oldest mountains on Earth, and the forests that cover them have their own logic, their own patterns, their own way of processing the world. When we enter those forests, we're not entering a park or a resource or a recreational opportunity. We're entering an ecosystem that's been functioning for millions of years without us, and our presence is a disruption it will process in whatever way makes sense within its own framework. Sometimes I wonder if the valley in this journal is real in a literal sense, or if it's real in a different way. A story that captures something true about the relationship between humans and the wild places we can never fully tame or understand. Either way, the lesson is the same. Some places don't want us. Some places are happy to take us in, but only on their own terms. And those terms might include giving up everything that makes us who we are. The trees are watching. They've always been watching, and we should be very careful about what we offer them when we enter their domain, because they're patient, they can wait, and they never, ever forget.